hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Judge Ken Lee Kato, nominated to the Central District of California, Jennifer Roshan, Southern District of New York, Sunshine Sykes, Central District of California. All three are well qualified. 2 have prior judicial experience. All 3 have significant trial experience. All 3 have management experience, an important consideration when judges are managing busy dockets. All 3 understand the role of a judge, committed to even-handedness and impartiality, and have promised to be guided by their fidelity to the rule of law. Lucky for us, several of our colleagues are here today to formally introduce them, and I'll turn to them shortly. Before I do, a brief comment on the news last week that Justice Stephen Breyer is retiring. During his nearly 3 decades on the Supreme Court, Justice Breyer has employed rigorous constitutional analysis and pragmatic thinking in pursuit of protecting America's freedoms and dignity. It's interesting to note he had his start in this room, working as a staff assistant to Senator Ted Kennedy, who chaired the committee at the time. He was appointed to appellate court and then ultimately to the Supreme Court, and it's worth noting that 27 years ago he was approved by the Senate by a vote of 87-9. We hope to return to those days sometime in the future. To Justice Breyer, the law and Constitution are not simply abstract topics, but rather forces in the fabric of American life. He's been a champion of protecting the right to vote, safeguarding American consumers, keeping our water clean to drink and our air clean to breathe, and defending women's reproductive freedom. He's dedicated his life not simply to public service, but to the ideals for which we strive: freedom, equality, and a Constitution that works for us all. His successor, no doubt, has big shoes to fill. I'm confident the President's nominee will be up to the task, whoever it may be. This committee will undertake a fair and timely process to examine her record and determine her fitness. That process must not only be fair to members of the committee, but also to the nominee herself. And so it's my expectation that this committee and all its members will treat the nominee with respect and an open mind. With that, I turn to the ranking member.
Before addressing the nominees before us, take a moment to congratulate Justice Breyer. He has 27 years of distinguished and devoted service on the Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, I hope that for him that he enjoys a well-deserved retirement. Let us now look at the role of progressive dark money groups. The far left's campaign pressuring Justice Breyer to retire was disgraceful. And after his decision was leaked, and it should have probably not been leaked, but it was, and immediately Demand Justice bragged that he was shamed into retiring by the tweets of progressive activists. Is that something to be proud of? I think nobody should be proud of that. This type of politicization and pressure is beneath the dignity of our federal courts. Now, President Biden faces a very important decision. I hope he will nominate a principled and experienced jurist who is committed to the rule of law. But once again, I worry about the role that progressive dark money groups will play in the nomination process. The far left has demanded a nominee who will be committed to rubber stamping a progressive political agenda by legislating from the bench. The job of a Supreme Court justice is to faithfully interpret and apply the Constitution and the nation's laws. Nothing more and nothing less. Potential nominees should be judged solely on their qualifications to perform this vital but limited role. Now to the nominees. 2 of the 3 are sitting judges with significant judicial experience. We have a federal magistrate judge and a state superior court judge. I hope we can have a productive discussion about their judicial philosophies. We also have Ms. Jennifer Roshan, who is currently General Counsel for the Girl Scouts of America. To you and your families, I congratulate you and look forward to our discussion.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. And we have a number of colleagues joining us this morning to introduce nominees. Visiting Senate dignitary, Senator Gillibrand. She will be recognized immediately after the California senators have a word to say about their nominee. Senator Feinstein.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm really pleased that this committee is considering two nominees from the state of California. Kato and Sunshine Sykes have both been nominated to serve on the United States District Court for the Central District of California. Judge Kato graduated summa cum laude from UCLA. She received her law degree cum laude from Harvard Law School. She began her career as a law clerk on the Central District of California. She then spent 6 years a federal public defender with the Public Defender's Office for the Central District of California. She regularly has appeared in federal court and handled a wide range of federal criminal cases. She then moved into private practice, where she worked on the criminal defense cases and civil litigation. She served as a member of the Central District's Criminal Justice Act panel, where she represented low-income clients in federal criminal cases. As an advocate, she has had significant experience in the courtroom. She has tried more than, more than a dozen cases to a verdict, judgment, or final decision, and served as the sole counsel in 11 of these trials. She has served as a federal magistrate judge for the Central District. She has presided over both civil and criminal cases, including 10 cases that have gone to a verdict or judgment. Judge Kato has shown an even-handed approach to her cases as a magistrate judge, and I believe will be an asset to the Central District bench. So I'm also pleased the committee is considering Judge Sykes. She began her career with California Indian Legal Services, where she worked to address domestic violence issues in Native communities. She has spent 2 years with the Juvenile Defense Panel, where she worked as an advocate on behalf of minors in juvenile dependency and delinquency cases. In both of these roles, she has become a real expert in legal issues related to the Indian Child Welfare Act. Since then, she served 8 years as a deputy county counsel for the Riverside County Counsel's Office. In 2013, she was appointed to serve on the California Superior Court for Riverside County. She's presided over both civil and criminal cases, including approximately 90 cases that have gone to a verdict or judgment. So she has well demonstrated her ability to effectively manage a busy caseload and handle a wide array of cases. I believe that both of these nominees are really quite terrific. So I thank the chair for holding the hearing today. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Feinstein. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to associate myself with your comments commending and thanking Justice Breyer for his tenure, not just on the Supreme Court, but his years and years of public service. As a California senator, he's a native Californian. We're particularly proud of him, and I don't think there's anybody who could have pressured or bullied him to make a decision that he didn't want to do. I have too much respect for him than to follow that line of thinking. But it is my honor this morning, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Grassley, to also introduce two of the outstanding nominees from California today, nominated to serve on the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. First, Judge Ken Lee Kato is with us, joined by her spouse Dana and her son Koji, who is just pretty upset that he's missing school today. But we'll have to make it up to him by maybe learning something in Judiciary Committee. And is Maya here with us today? Not after all? wasn't able to join us today. Judge Kato was born and raised in Los Angeles, earning her undergraduate degree from UCLA and her JD from Harvard Law School. She began, as you've heard, her legal career in the Central District as a law clerk to Judge Robert Takasugi. From there, she joined the Central District Federal Public Defender's Office. And over the course of 5 years there, Judge Kato represented hundreds of clients at the district and the circuit court level, helping to realize the constitutional right to counsel regardless of income. Judge Kato's roots in the Los Angeles legal community continued to deepen over the next decade. In her private legal practice, Judge Kato handled a range of criminal and civil litigation, frequently taking on pro bono work. Known throughout the Central District for her thoughtfulness and dedication, Judge Kato was chosen to become a federal magistrate judge in 2014. When she swore her judicial oath, she promised to administer equal justice under the law. And as a daughter of Japanese American parents who were interned during World War II, Judge Kato understands the power and the fragility of that charge on a deeply personal level. Judge Kato has demonstrated her commitment to equal justice time and time again as a magistrate judge. She has presided over a wide variety of criminal and civil matters and overseen 10 cases through their trials. And she has dedicated herself to 2 diversionary programs that help individuals achieve sobriety and re-enter their communities through alternatives to incarceration. I'm proud to support Judge Kato's nomination to the Central District Bench. Now it's also my honor to introduce and welcome Judge Sunshine Sykes and all the members of her family who are with her today. Here to support her, including her daughters. Welcome to the Senate, welcome to the Judiciary Committee. Judge Sykes is a path-breaking public servant, an accomplished attorney, and an experienced jurist. She is a member of the Coyote Pass clan of the Navajo Nation. Judge Sykes is devoted to pursuing justice for those who have too often been left behind by our legal system. She earned her undergraduate degree and her JD from Stanford University. And after law school, she chose to begin her legal career with the California Indian Legal Services. There, she represented survivors of domestic violence while also working to develop community solutions and support. Judge Sykes built a reputation as a skillful advisor and advocate for tribes addressing a wide variety of legal matters, from developing tribal courts to preserving cultural resources. She also developed an expertise in juvenile dependency cases under the Indian Child Welfare Act, which she furthered as an attorney with the Juvenile Defense Panel. Judge Sykes has demonstrated her compassion and dedication to the best interests of children as Deputy County Counsel for Riverside County, where she oversaw cases involving abused and neglected children. She continued to work with tribal organizations to support community solutions and culturally appropriate services for Native families. Now, recognizing Judge Sykes' outstanding work, Governor Jerry Brown appointed her to California's Superior Court in 2013. And over the past 9 years, Judge Sykes has presided over nearly 100 civil, criminal, and appellate cases. She is a leader on the Superior Court, appointed as presiding judge over the appellate division in 2019. She brings an impressive legal record, work ethic, and sense of empathy as a judge for the Central District. If confirmed, she will be the first Native American to serve on a federal court in California, and I'm so proud to support her nomination. Colleagues, both of these nominees are extremely well qualified for the job that they seek, and their qualifications are only strengthened by the personal, familial, and community history that they also bring with them to the bench. They exemplify in their respective ways why it is so important for us to rebuild all of our institutions, including our judiciary, in a way that better reflects the America that we serve. I'm thankful for Judge Kato and Judge Sykes' willingness to serve on the federal bench, and I strongly urge my colleagues to support their nominations. Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chair.
Padilla. Senator Gillibrand, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Grassley, and members of the Judiciary Committee. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Jennifer Roshan, nominee for the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. I was proud to recommend her to the President, and I hope she will receive a swift confirmation. Ms. Roshan will bring to the bench years of legal experience and a demonstrated commitment to giving back to her community. As Diane Nelson, CEO of the Girl Scouts of Eastern Iowa and Western Illinois, wrote to the committee, she, quote, exemplifies the Girl Scouts' mission of courage, confidence, and character in everything she does. I'm confident that Ms. Roshan has the qualifications, integrity, and temperament to serve as a federal judge. Those qualities were recognized by the American Bar Association's Standing Committee on the Federal Judiciary, which gave her a unanimous rating of well qualified, the highest possible rating. Ms. Roshan currently serves as the first ever General Counsel for the Girl Scouts of the United States of America, where she oversees the organization's legal affairs, compliance, and asset protection. As a member of the executive team, she also provides legal guidance on matters ranging from contracts and copyrights to trademarks and tax concerns. Previously, Ms. Roshan served as a litigation partner at the law firm of Kramer Levin, Naftalis, and Frankel, LLP in New York, and was the first woman to serve on the firm's executive committee. There, she litigated numerous commercial matters at the trial and appellate levels and in arbitration. Those matters include complex contract disputes to regulatory matters to disputes over intellectual property, advertising, and employment. Her practice also includes criminal and regulatory cases including those involving widespread financial fraud, market manipulation, and violations of international sanctions. And she represented clients before the U.S. Department of Justice, the SEC, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, among other government agencies. Early in her career, Ms. Roshan gained valuable experience clerking for both the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey and the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. One thing that has stood out for me about Ms. Roshan's career is her commitment to promoting girls and women's leadership and advocating for diversity in legal practice. This has been clear in her work with the Girl Scouts as General Counsel and outside the office as a troop leader for her daughter's Girl Scout troop. This commitment also shone through while at the law firm where she chaired Kramer Levin, Naftalis Frankel's Women's Initiative Committee, which focused on recruiting and retaining women attorneys, promoting women in leadership roles, and creating effective business networks for women. She also has exceptional academic qualifications as a graduate of the University of Michigan and the New York University Law School. I believe Ms. Roshan's experience makes her uniquely suited to this appointment, and if confirmed, I have every confidence that she will make good on the Girl Scout promise to serve her country, help people, and live by the law. I'm very proud to recommend her to the bench.
Thanks much, Senator Gillibrand. And now we'd ask the nominees to please step forward, if they would, to the table and be sworn in. If you'd each raise your right hand. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Let the record reflect the three nominees answered in the affirmative so we can proceed. We're going to go in alphabetical order. You each have 5 minutes to introduce yourself. We'll start with Judge Kato.
Thank you, Chair Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley, for holding today's hearing. Thank you to all the senators and their staff. A special thank you to my home state senators, Feinstein and Padilla, for their support and their warm introductions. And of course, my deep thanks and gratitude to President Biden for having faith in me and for nominating me for this position. With me here today is my husband, Dana Cephas, and our son, Koji. There are also family members supporting me remotely, including my sister, Maya Kato, and mother-in-law, Joyce Cephas. I want to thank and acknowledge my parents, my late father, Kenji, and my mother, Lily, who is watching in California. Together, they instilled in me and my sister the values of hard work, perseverance, and above all, treating everyone with dignity and respect. I also want to thank and acknowledge my court family in the Central District of California. including all of my current and former law clerks and courtroom deputies, my judicial colleagues, and the entire courthouse staff. I truly could not imagine a more dedicated group of public servants. Finally, thank you to all the mentors, family, and friends who have supported and guided me throughout my entire life. I have been so deeply touched by your recent outpouring of love and support. Again, thank you, Senators, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roshan.
Thank you to Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and all the committee members for holding this hearing today. I'd also like to thank Senator Gillibrand for her recommendation of me and for her kind introduction, and Senator Schumer for his support of my nomination. I'd also like to sincerely thank President Biden for the incredible honor of this nomination. I never imagined I'd be sitting here today being considered for a federal judgeship in the Southern District of New York. Having grown up in a tiny town in Michigan with 8 students in my 8th grade class and working 11 different jobs to pay for college. But I'm here today because of the people who supported me along the way, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to honor them. My wonderful children are here with me today. They are good, kind, smart, almost adults, and quite simply, they hold my heart. Speaking of my heart, my husband, Josh Goldberg, could not be here today. He is on trial as we speak. One of the best decisions that I ever made was joining a first-year law school study group with the most brilliant person I had ever met and have ever met, and I'm thankful to Josh for his partnership and support for the past 28 years. My parents, Louis and Angela Roshan, traveled here from Michigan, my hometown in Michigan, to be here today. They created a home filled with love and acceptance, where education, hard work, and public service were valued. I am proud to be their daughter. And finally, my dear friend Karen Price is here with us today. She and I served together in the United States Peace Corps as math teachers 30 years ago. I'd also like to thank all those who are supporting me from afar, such as my sister Julie and her husband Mike, my brother Mark and his wife Mindy, and all of my family and friends. And on today's momentous occasion, I remember my grandmother, Vera Ragaman, and I think of how she would be beaming if she were with us today. I understand the importance of public trust and confidence in our judiciary, and I welcome your questions as part of that essential process. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Sykes?
Chair Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley, thank you for scheduling this hearing. Senator Durbin, thank you for presiding. To each member of the committee, I appreciate your presence and consideration of my nomination. I am humbled and honored to be nominated by President Biden. Thank you to Senator Padilla and Senator Feinstein for your support and for your kind words this morning. I want to start by recognizing and honoring the Anacostans, Piscataway, and Pamunkey people, the first inhabitants and caretakers of the land that we call Washington, D.C. I would not be here today without the sacrifices and resilience of so many that came before me. I come from a long line of strong Maidashkizni Navajo women. The seed that brought me here existed long ago. It was held by my ancestors and nurtured by my great-grandmother when she raised her family while tending sheep on the Navajo reservation. It grew in my grandmother as she endured life at Indian boarding schools. It sprouted in my mother when, as a little girl, I saw her strength, even when she herself thought she had none, and it flourished in me. It is this spirit of nurturing, endurance, and strength that I have instilled in my daughters, which they will carry to the next generation. Supporting me today are my 4 daughters, Shandine, Isel, Soraya, and Cialea. You, my daughters, are the light of my life and my proudest creations. Joining them in traveling from Tuba City, Arizona, my hometown on the Navajo Reservation, is my mother, Marissa Greason, and her husband, William Greason, and my uncle and his wife, Michael and Delcine Bigay. Also present is my paternal uncle, Jay Sykes, and my cousin, Ginger Sykes Torres. My father and grandmother Irene are dearly missed, but remain close to my heart. I will always see the beauty of the desert sunrise through my grandmother's eyes, a chance to begin again. Watching from home are my brothers, David and Jeremiah, and many family members, friends, colleagues, and court staff. Too many hold such a special place in my heart to name them all. I would not be here today without their support. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Judge Sykes. I'm struck by this panel and your backgrounds and life stories. It goes without saying that you're outstanding attorneys, and in the case of two, served as judges. All three have been found to be unanimously well qualified by the American Bar Association. So I'm not going to give you a mini bar exam to see if you remember some details of the law. I'm going to try to ask for some insight into you as a person. Judge Kato, your parents interned during World War II as Japanese Americans. It has been my good fortune to meet people who went through that experience. Norm Mineta, a congressman who I served with and respect so much, and a personal friend, Yosh Golden, back in Springfield, Illinois. What life lesson did you learn from your parents about that experience?
Thank you, Chair Durbin, for that question. As you've alluded to, both of my parents were children who, with their families and 120,000 other Japanese Americans, were forced to leave their homes, their schools, their communities, and relocated to some of the most remote parts of our country, placed behind barbed wire with armed sentries. And it wasn't because they had committed a crime. It wasn't because they had done anything wrong. It was solely due to their ancestry. Hearing those stories of my family's firsthand experiences impressed upon me from a very young age the critical importance of securing our constitutional rights for everyone. It is what led me to the law. It is what led me to be a public defender so that I could play some role in ensuring that the Sixth Amendment was upheld. And now, as a United States magistrate judge, having taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, it is truly an honor for me to work each and every day to ensure that everyone's constitutional rights are protected.
I thank you for that. Judge Sykes, you have a similar story. You talk about your proud Navajo woman. I hope I've characterized your tribal affiliation properly. A proud Navajo woman. I'm sure you've heard stories from your family about the experience of Native Americans from a personal point of view. What have you learned from that?
Thank you, Chair Durbin. I have learned a wealth of information from my family, not only my Native family, but also my non-Native family. I learned strength and resilience. As I stated in my opening, my great-grandmother spoke only Navajo, and she herded sheep for a living. But education was always very important to my family, and she instilled in my grandmother and then in my mother the importance of using education and making better for ourselves and for our family. My mother also instilled in that to me from a very young age. She was able to achieve great success with me in tow through college, through obtaining her master's degree, and even obtaining a presidential management internship right here in Washington, D.C. through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So it is really the strength of my ancestors, the strength of the women in my life, as well as the strength that I got from living with my father. My father did instill in me different strengths as well, He always lived in big cities such as Los Angeles and Chicago and New York. And those experiences really taught me to adapt and to think quickly, because it was such a fast-paced world compared to living on the reservation and living with my mother. So it's those experiences that I bring with me to the bench. The experience of learning and respecting others, all living things, the experience of learning to adapt quickly, because as we often know, trials can bring unexpected events and you have to learn how to think on your feet. So it is all those experiences that I've gained from my family that I bring with me.
Thank you, Judge Sykes. Ms. Roshan, I don't know your entire family background. It's not presented to us, but I do know one thing, that you made a life decision to join the Peace Corps, which I respect very much, to give your life in service of your country in some faraway place. Tell me how that experience or others in your life have shaped you to the person that you are today.
Thank you, Senator. Public service has always been a priority in my family. My father was a public school teacher for over 30 years. My mother also a public school teacher and then social worker. And so the importance, my brother-in-law served in the military and is now a police officer. So the importance of giving back to our country has always been very important to me. Joining the Peace Corps was one opportunity that I had to use my skills as a math teacher to teach in both secondary schools as well as post-primary schools and work with those in areas that didn't otherwise have math education. So that was a wonderful experience, and I've been fortunate to be able to continue that through line of public service, not only through my pro bono work while I was at the law firm, but then to move to be the General Counsel of Girl Scouts of the USA. In that role, I'm very proud that our organization has provided life-changing experiences to millions of girls over the years for the past 100 years and is dedicated to doing so, and I'm very proud to be part of that tradition.
Thank you very much. Senator Grassley had to step away for a moment, so I'll recognize Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all of you. Judge Sykes, do you think America is mostly good or mostly bad?
Senator Kennedy, I think America is mostly good.
Thank you. How about you, Counselor Roshan?
I agree. I think it's mostly good.
Good. How about you, Judge?
Mostly good, Senator.
Okay, thank you. I'll start back here again. Judge Sykes, tell me about, tell me what the Dobert, some say Dobert, some say Dobert. I'm from Louisiana, so sometimes we say Dobert. Tell me what the Dobert or Dobert standard is.
Senator Kennedy, in my 8 years of practice as a Superior Court judge and presiding in the state of California, I have not had occasion to hear that the Dobert. So I can assure you, though, that I have had occasion where in a civil matter, I may not have known something, and I do the research necessary to discover and to research whatever it is that I need to do to make myself familiar with that. So I can assure you that in this case, I would do the same.
So you'll look it up?
Yes, Senator, I would do whatever it takes to make myself familiar with that and be prepared to go forward.
All right, can you tell me, as a federal judge, give me an instance where you will apply federal procedural law but state substantive law.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. In regards to an instance, I cannot think of an instance off the top of my head, but I am familiar with the Erie Doctrine, which guides that process. Okay. And the Erie Doctrine does require that.
What's it say? Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. The Erie Doctrine does require that I would follow federal procedural law and state substantive law.
Okay. You're nominated for Judge, Southern District of New York?
No, No, Senator.
sorry.
I'm nominated for the Central District of California.
Oh, okay, I apologize. Let me ask Councilor Roshan. Tell me what a putative class action is.
Thank you, Senator. In my 25 years of experience, I have been fortunate enough to work on some class action cases, including one regarding commodities manipulation. And in that case, I don't believe there was a putative class action.
Yeah, but just tell me what is one? What's a putative class action?
I would have to research it a little bit more, but I think it would, I would look at the case law regarding putative class actions, which I believe may differ by circuit. So I would look to the Second Circuit for exactly how they would interpret a putative class action.
Okay. Well, do you know the difference between a putative class action and a certified class action?
Thank you, Senator. A certified class action is where the court has certified that the elements of a class have been established. So numerosity and other elements have been established, and the court has certified that class action. You're reminding me that a putative class action is prior to that certification process.
It's a proposed class action.
Precisely. Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Is it Judge Kato or Kato?
Judge Kato.
Kato.
Thank you.
Judge. You're going to be on Southern District in New York, if confirmed. Is that right?
Central District of California.
Central District. I thought there were two of you that were going to be on the Southern District in New York. No? Okay. All right. Can you tell me what the Fourth Amendment is and the rule of search and seizure and what the exceptions are?
Thank you for that question, Senator. The Fourth Amendment prohibits search or seizure without a warrant.
Uh-huh. And the exceptions to it?
The exceptions are quite numerous, so I certainly wouldn't be
Just
able
give me
to
a couple.
Border search, exigent circumstances. Off the top of my head, I can't give you the full list, but there are quite a few.
Okay. Suppose California said, look, we appreciate the guidance of the U.S. Supreme Court on the warrant requirement and the exceptions, but we're not going to follow the exceptions here in California. If you want to arrest somebody, you better have a warrant. Can California do that?
Senator, it would be contrary to the Code of Canon, specifically Code of Conduct, specifically Canon 3, for me to give an opinion on a hypothetical like that.
Come on, Judge. Don't dodge my question. This is really basic constitutional law. Can California decide it's not going to follow the exceptions to the warrant requirement?
Certainly, Senator, if California decided to do that, I would imagine it would be an issue that would be litigated.
I would imagine too, but who's going to win if they litigate it?
Well, Senator, the first issue would be that pursuant to the Pullman abstention doctrine, that would be the type of issue that a federal court would defer to the state to allow the state to decide in the first instance whether or not it could perhaps be resolved.
Suppose the state did it. This is what I'm getting to. Suppose that California said, we appreciated the Supreme Court. I'm way over. I'm sorry. You need to look that up. Okay, it's pretty basic. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
No, you're perfectly welcome. And I would just say that I want to congratulate the panel on facing the Kennedy bar exam, which occasionally is administered in this room. And we are fortunate that the rules and decorum of the committee do not allow him to ask us the same questions because we would struggle with them, I'm sure, as well. Senator Feinstein?
Chairman, Judge Kato and Judge Sykes, if you're, excuse me, if you're confirmed, you would be joining one of the busiest federal district courts in the country and holding an extremely heavy caseload. So it's important to anyone confirmed to the Central District of California to be able to hit the ground running and to quickly pick up and manage a wide range of cases, both civil and criminal. I'd really like to hear from each one of you. Why do each of you believe you are that person, based on your experience?
I can go first,
Please.
Senator. Thank you. When I first started at the court in Riverside, I had
Could you speak a bit more loudly?
I apologize. When I first started as a judicial officer in Riverside 8 years ago, I had a caseload of over 900 cases in my unlimited civil department. And that, as you know, is a wealth of cases. I started out straight handling jury trials one after another. And I've continued that until I was just recently moved to chosen to be on a complex civil litigation department. In that capacity, over about a period of 2 years, I was able to reduce my caseload from 900 cases to about 500 cases. So I know hard work. A lot of judges in Riverside County, which is a highly impacted county, know hard work. So I do not doubt that I will be able to take the skills that I learned in the Riverside Superior Court and bring those with me to the federal court to start addressing some of those backlogs and the highly impacted court, if I am so fortunate to be confirmed.
Well, thank you. A very good answer. I'd like to hear from your other two potential colleagues what they would do.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. I have been so fortunate to have spent almost the entirety of my professional career in the federal system.
Would you raise the mic and speak up a bit more loudly?
Is that better?
Yes.
I started off as a judicial law clerk to one of our district court judges. Thereafter, I was a deputy federal public defender and in private practice, where my work was almost exclusively in the federal district court. For the past 7.5 years, I've had the privilege of serving as a United States magistrate judge in our very busy district. In that capacity, I've handled hundreds of cases. I've issued hundreds of orders. I've handled both a civil and a criminal docket. And I've handled many of those cases through verdict or even jury trial on a couple of occasions. So I am quite familiar with the particular docket of the Central District, and I believe that my experience would make me well prepared to take on the additional role and responsibilities of a United States District Court judge in our district.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. While not having the judicial experience of my colleagues here.
Could you raise that mic and speak directly into it?
Absolutely. While not having the judicial experience of my colleagues next to me, I do have a broad range of litigation experience that I think will serve me very well on the Southern District of New York. While at the law firm, I handled cases that ranged from antitrust to advertising, employment to ERISA, bankruptcy, criminal, regulatory, all sorts of matters. And then throughout my career, I've also worked at all stages of litigation. In the Southern District, obviously trial work, but as well pretrial work, motions and hearings and depositions and all aspects of litigation. That through line continued at the Girl Scouts of the United States of America, where I oversee all litigation that touches on the national organization, and the subject matters, again, vary widely between corporate governance, ERISA, intellectual property, and then any type of legal question that is raised to me. I provide advice to the board of directors, to our senior management, and sometimes to our 1,000-member delegate body. So the broad range of legal issues that I have litigated over my 25 years of experience, as well as all stages of litigation, I think make me well suited for a position on the Southern District of New York. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank all of you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. Senator Grassley.
I'm going to start with Judge Kato, but to all of you, congratulations on your being selected by the president. First, I'm interested in how you might read Constitution and statutes. California's district courts can see a number of constitutional cases. Kind of two related questions. First, and I'm going to ask both of them at the same time, kind of your view of the term living constitution. And second, do you believe that the meaning of a statute can change over time?
Thank you, Ranking Member Grassley. I think the term living constitution has different meanings for different people. However, if what you're referring to is the idea that the Constitution evolves, changes over time, I do not agree with that. I think one thing that's quite unique and brilliant about our Constitution is that it has an enduring, fixed quality. I apologize, I forget what the second part of your question was.
Along the same lines, do you think that a statute can change over time, the meaning of the statute change over time that Congress might pass?
Senator Grassley, the way that I approach statutory interpretation is I first start with the text of the statute. If it is clear and unambiguous, my analysis stops there. If, however, it is unclear or ambiguous, I would then go directly to Supreme Court and Ninth Circuit precedent to see how those courts have interpreted the statute at issue. In the rare occasion where there was no such authority, I would look to persuasive circuit courts from other circuits. I would also look at how the Supreme Court and the Ninth Circuit, what types of methods of interpretation they used in analyzing similar statutes. And last, I would go to canons of construction if none of the other avenues that I've just laid out provided sufficient guidance.
Thank you very much. Now to Judge Sykes. As a state court judge, you've written several opinions interpreting statute. In your decisions, you've discussed precedent, the text of a bill that was written by the legislature. You've also argued that policy reasons and legislative history can support reading statute in a certain way. For example, in one case, you dissented and argued that your colleagues should have, quote, provided a policy reason, end of quote, to support that interpretation. How should a federal judge weigh policy considerations when interpreting statutes?
Thank you, Ranking Member Grassley. In regards to a federal judge, and I would take the same approach in regards to what my colleague, Judge Kato, just indicated in regards to statutes. Of course, the legislative history is the very last thing to look at. The first thing to look at is the precedent. In our court would be the Ninth Circuit, it would also be the Supreme Court, and follow that precedent. If there was no precedent, of course, then I would look to other canons of construction as well, and other similar statutes or similar interpretations from other circuits. And only if that was not available would I ever look to any type of legislative history. As far as policy considerations, I would look directly to the statute and to the language of the statute. And if it was clear what the statute meant and unambiguous, I would follow that direction.
Okay, back to Judge Kato. When you were in law school, you co-authored a book review about Asian American activism. You gave the book's definition of what it means to be an Asian American neoconservative, but you also wrote your own definition in a footnote. You said that instead of attributing their success to progressives, neoconservatives have internalized the dialogue of oppressors. I'm wondering if you still believe that neoconservatives are people who have internalized the dialogue of oppressors.
Thank you, Ranking Member Grassley. I will admit, and I'm dating myself a bit here, I and a classmate of mine wrote that book review together over 25 years ago, and it's been quite some time since I visited it. So while I don't doubt that that's what we wrote, I have not looked back at it, and so at the moment I don't really have any recollection of what it was we were trying to convey by the language that you've just quoted.
Okay, I'll have to quit, but you could expand on that in writing to me.
Of course, thank
Thank you.
you.
Senator Blumenthal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all, three of you, for your service so far to our country and to the state of California and New York. I really just want to observe that as recently as 10, 15, 20 years ago, the likelihood of nominees with your backgrounds appearing before this panel would have been close to zero. And I think it speaks to the progress we've made as a country, but also to the quality of nominations that we've seen from this president, the quality in terms of professional merit. Each of you is extraordinarily well qualified, but you also help the federal bench to look like the people of America. And President Biden has made it a point of increasing the diversity of our nominees, diversity in race, religion, educational, and economic background. And I think it is a tribute to him and to the senators involved in your nominations that you are here today. And I look forward to strongly supporting each of you because not only of the diversity that you'll bring to the federal judiciary, but also your extraordinary qualifications. I was particularly moved, Judge Katko, by your story. There's a wonderful book called Facing the Mountain. I don't know whether you've seen it. It's about the Japanese who were interned during World War II and about the Japanese who fought for our nation and gave their lives.
It was actually the last book I just read. I agree. It's a wonderful book.
It's a wonderful book, and I recommend it to all my colleagues. Judge Sykes, I would love to see the Arizona sunrise through the eyes of your grandmother, and I hope that you always keep that vista with you. I'm also struck that you work in Indian legal services, Native American legal services, which I think are an area where the nation needs to devote more resources. Would you agree?
Yes, Senator, I would agree. There are a scarcity of resources on reservations throughout the country, one of which is legal services and legal representation. I was able, as a first-year law student, to return back to my reservation, to my hometown of Tuba City, Arizona, and work on issues through DNA legal services as well. I was fortunate enough after I graduated from law school to also work, as you stated, with California Indian Legal Services on a Equal Justice Works Fellowship. And in that capacity, I was able to work on issues concerning domestic violence in urban Indian communities as well as rural Indian communities, work that was much needed in those communities.
Ms. Roshan, how did you happen to go to the Girl Scouts of America as general counsel?
As I mentioned previously, a commitment to public service has always been a priority for me, and I was fortunate that I was asked to become the first general counsel of the Girl Scouts, I think in large part because of the work that I had done at the law firm regarding leadership opportunities for women advancement, retention, and other leadership opportunities, as well as working with judges in the state courts of New York to figure out ways where women could be first chair and speaking more in court cases. The women judges were asking for that in particular. So I was very active in that area, and because of that, I believe that's why they reached out and asked me to take that position, and I was very pleased to do so, to return to an organization that is serving our country as a congressionally chartered nonprofit organization that looks to leadership opportunities for women and girls.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of the nominees. Judge Kato, I want to start with you. Is racial discrimination wrong?
Senator, our Constitution prohibits race discrimination, discrimination on the basis of race.
Okay, let me ask again, is racial discrimination wrong?
Senator, as a judge, I don't deal with issues of morality or whether something...
So you have no views on whether it's right or wrong?
Senator, because that is an issue that is frequently litigated before the courts, pursuant to Canon 3 of the Code of Conduct.
Okay, so why does the Constitution prohibit racial discrimination?
Senator, I think it's part of our Constitution and this nation's history of aiming for equal justice and treating people, regardless of any protected class status, equally and fairly.
So discriminating based on race violates, I think you just said, our Constitution's history of aiming for justice. Is that a fair characterization?
Senator, our case law, if you're talking about race discrimination under the law, yes, pursuant to Supreme Court precedent, race discrimination under the law is prohibited.
So you and I are both graduates of the Harvard Law School. We were there at the same time. I don't think we crossed
We did not.
As you know, our alma mater is currently before the Supreme Court for its longstanding practice of discriminating against Asian Americans. And many top universities across the country have vicious discrimination policies against Asian Americans. They are reminiscent of the quotas against Jews that we saw these same schools impose in the 1950s. These schools believe that Asian Americans have been too successful academically, and that if they allow students to compete based on merit, they'd have too many Asian Americans. And accordingly, Harvard and Yale and a number of other top schools in this country explicitly and brazenly discriminate against Asian Americans. Does that practice concern you?
Senator Cruz, as you know, the Supreme Court recently granted cert in the case to which I think you're referring.
Yes.
And therefore, pursuant again to Canon 3, I am
Okay, so you're going to decline to comment, so let's not talk about that case, but let's talk about what you've written. You know, I have to say I was astonished. Senator Grassley asked you about this article you wrote in law school, and your response was, well, gosh, I haven't read that. In my experience, when people are nominated to be a judge, they do some preparation. Did you not reread it in preparation, or did the Biden team tell you don't read it because you don't want to answer questions about it?
Senator, I read it, but again, the question that Senator Grassley...
Okay, good. So you read it, so let's talk about it. I've read it sitting here, and I find it stunning. Look, there is a pattern of this administration nominating political activists and radicals to the bench, and they've done it for a year. And it's highly concerning. So I'm looking at what you wrote, your words. You described, quote, the Reagan presidency represented the pinnacle of the counteroffensive launched by the guardians of the status quo. In the face of institutional resistance, activist movements redirected their focus from liberation to survival. Do you believe there was a threat to the survival of Asian American groups under President Reagan?
Senator Cruz, again, that was a law review, book review.
I'm just asking if you agree with the sentiment. You wrote it.
Senator, I don't recall
Do you agree with it
what
now?
we were thinking.
Do you agree with the sentiment now? Not what you were thinking then. I'm not asking your state of mind then. I'm saying, do you agree with the words you wrote?
Senator, again, I don't know what our purpose and
I don't want
intent-
your purpose then. Today, as you listen to the words you wrote, do you agree with them or do you think I was wrong?
Senator, without the complete context,
Okay, let's read a little bit more then. You talk about the neoconservative view, and here's what you define an Asian neoconservative: as someone with an opposition to racism, so that's good, but a commitment to ending affirmative action programs. And you write, quote, the neoconservatives' narrow vision of success currently threatens to impose divisions within the Asian American community and among different ethnic groups. Emphasizing personal achievement and success as measured by the status quo, the Asian American neoconservative fails to acknowledge the shared history of oppression and then ties their individual success to the survival and liberation of all oppressed peoples. Judge Kato, as I read this, what you're saying, and if you will permit me to use a more common vernacular, you're saying that to be sufficiently woke, an Asian American must support policies that discriminate against Asian Americans. I got to tell you, that doesn't make sense. Is my reading of what you wrote incorrect?
Senator Cruz, again, we are talking about something that I wrote when I think I was a 23-year-old
But do you agree with it today? I'm not asking what you thought then. I'm saying today, as you sit here, as the Senate is considering you for a lifetime appointment as a judge, do you agree with what you wrote that Asian Americans, to be sufficiently liberated, must support discrimination against Asian Americans?
Senator, without the complete context of that particular quote that you've excised,
I read it to you.
I cannot give you whether my opinion today, whether or not I agree with what I said as a 23-year-old law student. I would have to review the entirety.
But you said you did review it before this hearing, right?
Senator,
Correct?
I reviewed it briefly. This was quite some time ago, over 25 years.
It's a very short article. It's about 6 pages.
I co-wrote it with a classmate of mine.
Senator's time has expired. Senator Rona?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to our panel. I am delighted to see each of you because you represent the kind of diversity of background and experience that I think is good for our courts. I asked the following 2 questions of all nominees before any of the committees that I sit on. I'm sure you've been apprised of that fact, so I'm going to ask the panel as a panel the following 2 preliminary questions. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature? Just go down the line.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Thank you. Have you ever faced discipline and entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
I must say that it's always, or often, I would say, fun to listen to Senator Kennedy and his questioning. And, I've learned that there's hardly anything about the law that is basic unless maybe that Brown versus Board of Education was correctly decided. I think that is pretty basic. And as for the questioning relating to racial discrimination, I'd say racial discrimination is wrong, but often the argument becomes whether a certain practice or law is racially discriminatory. I think that's where the argument lies. So the line of questioning from the previous senator, it's like, wow, hey, makes me scratch my head. Okay, so going on, Judge Kato, when did you learn in class that Japanese Americans were interned during World War II based on their race? In class?
Senator, if I did learn it in class, and it's hard for me to distinguish, it was probably not until college at UCLA.
Isn't that amazing?
It's disheartening for sure.
Yes, and I'd like to ask the other 2 panelists, nominees, when did you learn in class about the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II?
I don't believe that I learned of it in class until I was at the University of Michigan.
Judge Sykes?
Senator, I believe that I first learned about that during high school, at some point during my high school career, probably my junior or senior year later on in my high school career.
So as we talk about racial discrimination, sitting here, I can tell you that I cannot even recall ever learning in class about the internment of World War II. Judge Sykes, when did you learn, and congratulations, you'll be one of the few Native Americans to ever sit in the federal courts, should you be confirmed. When did you learn that of all of the treaties that our country had entered into with Native American tribes, when did you learn that our country never kept a single one of them? We broke every single one of these treaties. When did you learn that in class?
Senator, I don't believe I ever learned that in class. It was something that was taught to me or brought up to me from my family, from my Native family, and learned through stories and tradition. So formally in class, I was never taught that.
For the other two nominees, when did you learn in school that our country did not we broke every single one of the treaties that we ever entered into with any of the Native American tribes?
I don't recall discussing or learning about Native American treaties at all in my high school education, so it would have been at university.
Judge Kato?
I have the same response as Ms. Roshan. It was not something that I learned in school.
So you were asked whether America, our country, is, I forget, whether we're mostly good. And I think it has to do with the fact that we ascribe to live up to that all people, I'm not going to even say all men are created equal, that all people are created equal and that there should be equal justice under the law. And that is something to live up to. But just from my dialogue with you, it's very clear that our country has a ways to go. And I'm just going to end, Mr. Chairman, my questioning with that note that I'm very glad that we have nominees with the kind of diverse backgrounds that I hope will be brought to bear as you make decisions. Should you be confirmed, and I would be very happy to vote for each of your confirmations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator Rono. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of you. Ms. Roshan, I want to start with you. Your pro bono work that you did with the American Immigration Lawyers Association. You contributed to an amicus brief that supported an argument that mandatory detention of criminal aliens pending deportation proceedings is unconstitutional. You recall this?
I do, Senator.
Okay. Now, the Supreme Court disagreed with that opinion, so how do you evaluate the argument you made in your amicus in light of the Supreme Court's pronouncement?
Thank you, Senator. In those amicus briefs, as an advocate, we made the argument that in those instances, while the individual was awaiting deportation or removal, that an individualized hearing should be afforded that individual to determine flight risk or safety to the community. As you noted, the Supreme Court has disagreed with that in the DeMoore case, and if confirmed, I would faithfully follow the DeMoore case that holds that there is no individualized hearing and there is mandatory detention.
Okay, thank you for that. So your opinion has changed. Is that fair to say? Would you couch it that way?
Well, when I was drafting those amicus briefs, it was as an advocate, and so as a judge, I would now follow the law.
Right, you would approach it a different way.
I would approach it consistent with the DeMoore case, absolutely.
Judge Kato, am I saying that correctly?
Kato, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I knew that didn't sound right. Okay, let's talk about the bail requirement that you cut in half for Brandon McDowell.
Senator Blackburn, I handle multiple bail matters.
I'll help refresh your memory
Thank
on
you.
this one. Thank you. It was last month. You cut the bail requirement in half for a defendant, Brandon McDowell, indicted for distributing fentanyl, which resulted in a woman's death. And the defendant sold a woman counterfeit oxycodone, and she died. And we have a drug epidemic. We see so many drugs coming over that open southern border, and people are losing their lives. And we're hearing reports from the Wall Street Journal and the Department of Justice that counterfeit prescription opioids are increasingly coming into this country. And this is at a crisis. So how would you justify your decision to make it easier for drug runners and distributors to put counterfeit fentanyl on the streets and somebody loses their life?
Senator Blackburn, I would wholeheartedly agree with you that the drug epidemic is something that
So why did you cut the bail requirement in half?
Senator Blackburn, again, I don't know whether that was a case where perhaps the parties stipulated to modification of the bail. Again, without looking at the docket, it's really hard for me to...
Let me have you submit an answer in writing for that. This is one of the issues that comes up most often with our law enforcement in Tennessee. And I had a sheriff last week tell me, he said, you know, every town's a border town, every state's a border state with that open border, and we used to measure drugs that we apprehended in grams or ounces, and now it is in pounds. So I was stunned when I saw the action that you had taken, and really quite troubled by that. Judge Sykes, how would you describe your approach to statutory interpretation?
Senator Blackburn, of course, the first step would be to follow the precedent of the Supreme Court,
And what
as
about
well
text?
as the Ninth Circuit. Well, of course, first I would look at the text.
You would go with
and
the
if
text.
if it was clear and unambiguous, then I would start there. If it was ambiguous, then I would look to the guidance from the Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit, as well as
Okay.
similar.
So you would start with the text and then go to precedent.
Yes.
Okay. Is it ever proper for judges to indulge their own policy preferences in determining what the law means?
No, that would be
Okay.
improper.
So let's talk about People versus Kimsey. You dissented from the majority of the court on the interpretation of a statutory provision dealing with booking fees paid by criminal defendants. In support of your argument, you cited one of the cardinal rules of construction that requires that words be given such interpretation. Words be given such interpretation as will promote rather than defeat the general purpose and policy of the law. So a statute should be interpreted so as to produce a result that is reasonable, end quote. When you're applying this rule of construction, how do you distinguish between what is objectively reasonable and what is simply your own policy preference?
Senator Blackburn, in that case, I first, of course, looked at the text to see if the text was ambiguous or unambiguous. In that case, there was conflicting statutory provisions that pertain to whether or not an individual was arrested by a local sheriff or the individual was arrested by the California Highway Patrol. So in that instance, I had to look at the other provisions that dealt with the other similar statutory statutes that pertain to the booking fees. So I actually looked at the text and I compared it to the other statutory provisions of the similar text and ultimately came to the determination that in looking at the paragraph as a whole in its entirety, that the booking fees provision required an ability to pay hearing prior to the imposition. So in actuality, I looked at the entire paragraph of the text in total and made my determination through that review.
Would you say you inserted personal preference into that decision?
No, I did not insert any personal preference, and it was later found by our appellate district that, in fact, my interpretation was correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blackburn. Senator Whitehouse is going to
Thank you, Chairman.
join us remotely.
I am here remotely. Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations to the 3 nominees who are before the committee. Forgive me for not being there in person. I wanted to ask all 3 of you, if I could, a little bit about juries. As district courts, one of your jobs will be to manage juries and to make sure where appropriate that plaintiffs get the access to a trial by jury. It's ordinarily fairly non-controversial. It's protected in the 7th Amendment, for instance. And it has a long history. The jury trial was one of the causes of war in the Declaration of Independence, because the king had meddled with colonial juries. And one of my favorite comments about juries by Blackstone, whose commentaries were both famous and probably the single most read authority in that founding era, said that one of the purposes of the jury is to confound the encroachments of the powerful and wealthy citizens. And we do that with juries in a lot of ways. You can't tamper with a jury. They don't get picked until the case is before you. So it's hard for people to try to influence them. And if they tried, it would be sanctionable and likely criminal. And they're one time only. So it's hard to interfere with the institution. And their whole purpose is to provide even-handed justice. So if you are extremely powerful and wealthy, like, say, a ginormous corporation, and you're used to getting your way around Congress with armadas of lobbyists and campaign contributions, and you're used to being able to, march into the Oval Office with a friendly president and ask for big favors for your company and for your industry, it can be a little bit distressing to have to turn up in a courtroom before a jury and have no preeminence at all. To be standing there on exactly the same footing as the plaintiff who has brought his or her action against you. So for a lot of reasons, and with much activity by the Republican justices on the Supreme Court, the actual practice of jury trial has been whittled and whittled and whittled and whittled away. And in many cases, in many districts, the number of cases that actually go to jury trial is, in the single-digit percentages and in the low single-digit percentages. So with that background, I just want to ask each of you if you will do your best to try to make sure that trial by jury stays alive in your district, wherever it is appropriate, when you are presiding in that district court.
Certainly, Senator, I can start. The jury system is the foundation, or one of the foundations, to our democracy. I have myself handled a number of jury trials. I've handled about almost 100 trials, the most of which of those are, in fact, jury trials. And when the jury gathers in my courtroom the very first day of voir dire, I do emphasize the importance of our jury system and that their role in our democracy to serve in the jury system. So certainly I try to encourage all jurors that it is their duty as a United States citizen to serve in that capacity, and I try to encourage them not to get out of jury duty, which most of them want to, but certainly I emphasize to them the importance of the jury system, and I will, as if I am so fortunate enough to be confirmed to the United States District Court, will ensure that that jury system is, of course, utilized and open to all litigants in my court pursuant to the law.
Something special and something distinctly American happens in a jury room, doesn't it? Can I ask the other two nominees to comment briefly?
Certainly, Senator. I agree with Judge Sykes in the foundational aspect of a jury and in your observation that it is a great equalizer. I will do my best to preserve every aspect of that if I'm fortunate to be confirmed, not only because of the role of a jury in fact-finding, et cetera, procedurally, but because juries provide, in a civil context, important transparency and enhance the public integrity in the system. And I do believe that the involvement of our citizenry in the administration of justice and in resolving disputes is very valuable. I will also say that I have observed in almost every instance that everyone who has served on a jury does so with the utmost sense of responsibility and does so to the best of their ability.
And last words, Magistrate Judge Kato.
Thank you, Senator. I, like Judge Sykes, also am involved when jurors come in, and I certainly impress upon them just what a unique system we have and how fortunate we are to have a system where members of the community sit in judgment of cases, criminal cases, as well as multi-million-dollar civil cases. And so I certainly concur with everything that's been said, and I concur with you that this is something that's uniquely American and so important that it's in our Bill of Rights. And so we all need to work to preserve that.
Thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees on your nominations. Thanks for being here. Ms. Kato, let me start with you, if I could. Judge Kato, you were quoted in a 2002 LA Weekly article, and I've got it here, about an effort by federal law enforcement officials right after 9/11 to prosecute individuals who had fraudulently obtained security clearances at airports. The article says that at the time, 563 people had been arrested in this particular government prosecution effort. Many of them were illegal immigrants, and they'd been charged with a number of crimes, including false presentation of a Social Security number, false use of Social Security cards, falsely claiming to be a U.S. citizen. You said in the article, this is why you appeared in it, something that I find peculiar, and I want to give you a chance to explain it. You say these are people who haven't done anything wrong. And then you go on to say that they are people who, in the government's mind, are just throwaways. So we're in the midst of, it's no secret, we're in the midst of a very significant crime wave in this country, assaults, homicides, you name it. Unfortunately, we've seen it in my home state of Missouri. So I'm really concerned about crime. And I'm concerned about what this administration is and is not doing to combat crime. The answer is they're not doing really anything of any import. And obviously, I'm concerned about what you would do on the bench in this regard. So let me just ask you, do you still think that people who have committed crimes, like the 563 folks here, references this article, do you still think that that's doing nothing wrong? Help me understand what you meant by that.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. You're correct. I was involved in that case, I think over 20 years ago, when I was appointed to represent individuals when I was a deputy federal public defender. In that role, my role was to do what I did for all of my clients, which was to put aside any personal opinions I might have about what they were accused of, to zealously advocate on their behalf, and to ensure that their Sixth Amendment rights were fulfilled. And that was what I was doing. In terms of the case itself, I do want to point out that in the Central District of California, the number of cases involved in that operation was somewhere around 100, a little bit over 100, maybe 107. And as a result of the advocacy from the Public Defender's Office, as well as other community organizations, we were able to convince the U.S. Attorney's Office to offer misdemeanor dispositions for the majority of those cases, dismissals in some of the cases. And so while I'm in no way, minimizing the seriousness of it, I do believe that as a result of zealous advocacy, the U.S. Attorney's Office agreed that the charges that were originally brought as all felonies, that justice required that either be reduced or dismissed in some cases.
Yeah, what concerns me is the comment that these people haven't done anything wrong, where we're talking about 563 individuals who had fraudulently obtained security clearances right after the worst terrorist attack in this nation's history. Let me ask you something else. 18 U.S.C. 1325 makes it a crime to enter this country illegally, right? I think that's a matter of fact.
It does.
And it's a crime to cross the southern border if you don't go through a port of entry, correct?
Yes, Senator.
And it's a felony if you do it more than once, correct?
If you've been prosecuted previously.
So you said about hundreds of people who had entered the country illegally that they hadn't done anything wrong. Do you have any idea what percentage of your cases, if you're confirmed, would involve offenses like immigration and fraud?
I do not, Senator.
It's 38%. The U.S. Sentencing Commission, and I have the numbers here before me for the Central District, it's 38% of your criminal docket would be offenses like immigration and fraud. And I'm worried, frankly, given your statements and record on this issue, that something that's going to make up a huge portion of your docket is an issue on which you have said that you've expressed concern about whether these things are really crimes, whether they really should be prosecuted, and you just amply described your efforts to make sure that folks were not prosecuted. Is there anything you can say to convince us that you'd be able to do your job here in such a large portion of your docket in the midst of one of the worst crime waves in this country's history?
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Again, the statements and the advocacy that I engaged in were when I was serving in my role as a deputy federal public defender.
Have you changed your view since then? Is that what the implication?
My role has changed. For the past 7.5 years, I've served as a sitting United States magistrate judge, and my record demonstrates that I was able to put aside my advocacy role, and now my role is solely one where my duty of loyalty is to the law and the law alone.
So you would say about your previous comments that these people haven't done anything wrong, you disagree with that now. You acknowledge that violating the law, presenting false clearances at airports, fraud, illegal immigration, that those are in fact crimes.
Senator, number one, as former counsel to those individuals, it would be inappropriate for me to make the type of statement that you are requesting.
No, I'm requesting that you clarify your view, which you made to a newspaper. You didn't make it in court. You made it to a newspaper. And I'm asking you to clarify whether you think that these people haven't done anything wrong, and in particular, the crimes that they were accused of. Are those things crimes or not? Are they serious or not? And you suggested to me now, you said several times, well, that was in a past role, which suggests that you think that your views have changed. I'm just trying to understand where you're actually coming down on this.
Senator, as I've stated, those statements were made in the course of my advocacy work. I currently sit as a United States magistrate judge where I'm no longer an advocate. Those are very different roles, and I understand that. And I've performed my role as a sitting United States magistrate judge for the past 7.5 years.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. In Judge Kato, you were a member of Kato, sorry. You were a member of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, which describes itself as an advocate for an end to the death penalty. Do you agree with the Supreme Court's ruling that the death penalty is constitutional and always has been constitutional?
Senator Hawley, I'm aware and I'm bound by the Supreme Court decision wherein the death penalty has not been ruled unconstitutional.
So that's a yes.
I agree with the Supreme Court, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley, and thanks to the witnesses. The good news is there are no additional questions to be asked. The questions for the record will be due to the nominees by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 8th, and the record will stay open until that time to submit letters and similar materials. And with that, the hearing stands adjourned. Thank you all very much.